cooperation is between Israel and the United States, not only at the political level, but crucially at the military level. And that's why, since even before we had confirmation from American and Israeli officials that the U.S. knew of the strike on Iran's gas infrastructure, it was almost impossible that the U.S. didn't know because of that coordination. In terms of what else we heard from the press conference, frankly, not all that much new. Netanyahu spent a lot of time praising Trump. That's not at all a surprise. He needs Trump if he wants to continue this war, and Israel has made very clear it has plans for several more weeks of war, so they need Trump on their side. So it's, again, no surprise that you hear Netanyahu praising him and saying he's the only leader who has to do this. You also heard him echoing what has become a Trump administration talking point, saying that the war between Iran and Israel and the U.S. happened started back in 1979. We've heard Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth say this a lot in the U.S. Netanyahu was echoing those talking points here for a bit. And then he, frankly, gloated about Israel's military successes and the U.S. military successes since the beginning of the war. Other than the answer on the South Pars gas field, I don't think we learned all that much that was new. This is Netanyahu in a very comfortable position for him as Israel continues to carry out pretty much unmolested strikes against Iran with coordination with the U.S.
What did you make of what he was saying about Reza Pahlavi, obviously the son of the former Shah, who wants to go in and head a transitional government? The Prime Minister said you can't do revolutions from the air. Does that imply that he doesn't expect regime change, or that regime change would only come through some sort of ground operation?
I think what's become clear here as we near the 3-week point is that Israel will accept nothing short of this regime collapsing as they go after just about every leader, official, senior member of the leadership there and the Iranian regime. But in terms of the plans for the day after, Israel doesn't really have that plan out at all. He said Israel is creating the conditions for the collapse of the regime, and he hopes the Iranian people will overthrow the regime when the time is right. He's called on the Iranian people to do that several times. Again, sort of this reference to some time in the future where they'll have the opportunity to do so, but it doesn't seem like Israel actually has any plan to make that happen. He's right that it's very difficult to change a regime with airstrikes alone. He's aware of that. I think the U.S. is very much aware of that. In terms of Reza Pahlavi, he met Pahlavi some years ago, I believe in early 2023, perhaps in April of 2023, but he hasn't pinned his hopes on Pahlavi. Seems like neither has President Donald Trump. So in terms of what comes next, I don't think that Israel has a plan for the day after. Israel is very much content where it is right now, carrying out repeated strikes against more and more parts of Iran.
I want to bring in UNICEF's global spokesperson, James Elder. UN agencies, the Children's Agency has teams on the ground throughout the Middle East, including in Lebanon and in Iran. James, great to have you back on the show. Just picking up really from what we heard from that little clip, and so many of these people have been displaced not once, not twice, some of them 3 times over, right? A huge humanitarian crisis, unprecedented, and more than 1,000 people killed, of those 116 children. I mean, the numbers are staggering. Give us a sense of what your team is telling you.
I think the most common thing we hear from children, from families, from health workers, is just this idea of fear. And this is not a new crisis. This is one that's being repeated. We've had children, speak to our colleagues, talk about that. They feel like their lives are ruined. 15 months ago, those images you just saw, we again had hundreds of thousands of children having to seek shelter, whether it was on the streets or whether it was in schools. We again had 50 children killed in the space of 2 days. This time it's about a classroom with children killed or wounded every day since the attacks started on Lebanon. So no one, not health workers, not mums, not dads, certainly not children, is had any chance to recover physically, psychologically from what they endured just 15 months ago. And we're seeing that cycle again. I mean, you and I spoke around that time when I was in Lebanon 15 months ago, and I sat with a little boy who had somehow survived an attack but had not yet been told that his mother and father had been killed. Today, my colleagues have two girls, 2 sisters, who were waiting for psychologists to come and speak to them. They had survived an attack, but these 2 young sisters had not been told that their mum and their dad and their brother had all been killed. So it's all on rewind for children who
with these evacuation orders that are being put out by Israel. I mean, their homes aren't safe, and now it seems schools are being turned into shelters, though I understand many are already full. So where are people staying? Where are people going? And are there conditions for so many people, James?
No, yeah, the fact is there's urgent shortages everywhere. I mean, you use them, for example, you do a lot of mobile health teams who are in there supporting hospitals, those hospitals that have not been damaged and closed through airstrikes, particularly supporting them around the ICU for pediatrics. But there are critical support shortages in the most basic things that families need: mattresses, water, blankets. But people start to forget the idea that children should be in school. Instead, they're living in schools right now. And many of them, of course, aren't able to live in school. Many of them, when they get warnings of an attack on their home, or they hear on the grapevine that there may be an attack in their neighbourhood, they just fly onto the streets and seek refuge wherever they can, knowing that there is no real such thing as refuge at the moment. So that's the reality.
No,
of
Trixie.
children. This is the point
No.
I'm stressing. I mean, it's been interesting to watch so much.
No, Trixie.
That there's
No.
been this escalation in oil prices, and of course that instantly ripples, into economies, and it dominates headlines and conversations, as it should, because that obviously affects millions of people all around the world. But there's another escalation, and that escalation is in girls and boys being killed, and that's becoming background noise.
Yeah, and look, it doesn't seem, unfortunately, that this is escalating, at least not so far. And as we continue, James, to see a rise in conflicts, Lebanon, Gaza, Iran, Sudan, are you seeing an increase or decrease in supporting humanitarian funding?
It's a great question. Yes, absolutely. I mean, the idea that the financial crisis of 2008 and 9, and everyone knows that the banks were bailed out. No one is bailing out the children. This is the biggest financial crisis that the humanitarian world has seen since its advent after World War II, at a time of unprecedented need. So whether we talk to a health worker who's going in incredible lengths in the Democratic Republic of Congo, or one going through gang territory in Haiti, they have no idea why then they get to their health spot and that they suddenly don't have the vaccines, they don't have the materials that they need. They don't understand why they're having the rug pulled out from under them. So we're seeing two sides of the same moral street, I think. But the laws of war are being disregarded, and that's why we're seeing such a huge number of children being killed. That shows that rules are optional. At the same time, when nations cut aid, that shows that compassion is optional too.
Yeah. Look, we've been speaking about Lebanon, but I really want your insight on what you're hearing in what's going on in Iran. What are your teams telling you in terms of what people need, as well, not only their needs, but their fears, James?
Yeah, the fears is a great question. And I spoke to a colleague earlier, and I give you the exact line that a mother shared with her, Issa, which was that the mum said, as she had managed to rescue her son from a school 2 days earlier, and she trying again to try and talk her child through that trauma, but knowing she did that 6 months earlier when Iran was last under attack. And she said, all my life I've tried to make a better world for children, not